The dust devils danced across Main Street like specters of the dead, and Olivia Edwards stood at the fresh grave markers behind the church. Her black mourning dress, already faded gray from weeks of wear, wondering if she had any tears left to cry. The scarlet fever had swept through Alta, Utah in the autumn of 1878 like wildfire through dried wheat, taking her father first, then her mother 3 days later, and finally, her younger brother Samuel just last week. She was 21 years old and completely alone in a world that had no patience for solitary women. The September sun beat down mercilessly as she walked back toward the small house her family had built 5 years ago when they first arrived from Pennsylvania, hoping the mountain air would be good for her father's lungs. How foolish those hopes seemed now. The house stood empty, echoing with ghosts of laughter that would never return. Her father's tools hung unused in the shed. Her mother's preserves lined the shelves in the cellar. Samuel's drawings of horses still covered the walls of the room they had shared. Olivia sat at the kitchen table, staring at the stack of bills and notices that had accumulated. The mortgage payment was due in 2 weeks. The general store wanted payment for the medicine she had bought, trying desperately to save her family. Mr. Pemberton, the banker, had already stopped by twice to discuss her options, each visit more pointed than the last. A woman alone could not keep property. She would need to sell, he insisted, and move to somewhere more suitable for her situation. But where would she go? She had no aunts or uncles, no cousins waiting in distant cities. Her grandparents had all passed before she was born. The Edwards line ended with her, a branch severed from the tree, falling alone. The knock at the door startled her from her dark thoughts. She opened it to find Matthew Walker standing on her porch, hat in his hands, his weathered face showing genuine concern. She knew him by sight, of course. Everyone in Alta knew everyone else. Matthew worked the cattle drives that came through the area, one of the best hands in the territory, according to local talk. He was maybe 25, tall and lean with dark hair that curled at his collar and gray eyes that held surprising gentleness for a man who lived such a hard life. "Miss Edwards," he said, his voice low and respectful, "I heard about Samuel. I am so sorry for your losses, all of them." "Thank you, Mr. Walker." Her voice came out thin and distant like it belonged to someone else. "I wanted to come by sooner, but I have been up in the high country with the herd. Just got back yesterday and heard the news." He shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable but determined. "I know this is not the best time, but I also heard Pemberton has been pressuring you about the house." Olivia felt her spine stiffen. News travels fast. In a town this size, everything travels fast. He met her eyes directly. "I also know you do not have any family left. The fever took everyone." The blunt words, spoken with such straightforward sympathy, nearly broke through the numbness that had been her only shield. She gripped the door frame. "I am managing." "Are you?" It was not a challenge, just an honest question. "Because managing and surviving are 2 different things, and I am not sure anyone could do either in your situation without help. I do not need charity, Mr. Walker. I am not offering charity." He took a breath, seeming to gather courage. "Miss Edwards, I know this is going to sound strange, and if you want to slam the door in my face, I will understand completely. But I have been thinking about this all night, and I cannot let it go unsaid." He paused, his knuckles white where he gripped his hat. "You have me now if you want." Olivia stared at him, certain she had misheard. "What?" "You need someone, and I am offering to be that someone. I know we barely know each other. I know I am probably crazy for even suggesting this. But I have a little money saved up, enough to pay off your mortgage and those bills. I could move in here, make it proper and legal. We could get married. You would not have to leave your home, and you would not be alone anymore." The word married hung in the air between them like something solid and strange. "You want to marry me?" Her voice sounded faint even to her own ears. "I want to help you," he said carefully. "And yes, if that means marrying you, then that is what I am proposing. I know I am not much of a catch. I spend most of my time with cattle and horses, and I do not have fancy manners or education. But I am honest, I work hard, and I would treat you with respect and kindness. You would not have to worry about Pemberton or anyone else pushing you around." Olivia felt the world tilt slightly. This morning she had been planning how to pack her few possessions before the bank took the house. Now a man she had never spoken to before today was offering to marry her to save her from destitution. It was absurd. It was impossible. It was also the only lifeline being offered in a sea that was rapidly drowning her. "Why would you do this?" she asked. "You do not know me. You do not owe me anything." Matthew looked down at his hat, then back up at her. "My mother died when I was 12. My father drank himself to death 2 years after that. I know what it feels like to be alone in this world with nobody to turn to. I got lucky. A rancher named Tom Willis took me in, taught me the cattle business, gave me a purpose. He died last spring, left me a small inheritance. I have been drifting since then, working drives because I did not know what else to do. Maybe this is what I am supposed to do with that money. Maybe helping you is how I pay forward the kindness Tom showed me." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. This was not some opportunist looking to take advantage. This was someone who understood loss and was genuinely trying to help. Olivia felt something crack in her chest, the numbness finally breaking. "I do not love you," she said quietly. "I know. I am not asking for love. I am asking if you would let me help you, and if being my wife is the way that has to happen to make it respectable, then so be it. We can figure out everything else as we go." She should say no. She should tell him this was insane and close the door. But when she opened her mouth, different words came out. "I would need time to think about it, of course. Take all the time you need." He set something on the porch railing. "I brought this in case you need it sooner than later. It should be enough to hold off Pemberton for a while, whether you decide to marry me or not." It was a leather pouch, heavy with coins. Olivia stared at it in shock. "I cannot take your money. You can and you will. Consider it a loan if it makes you feel better. You can pay me back someday if you want, but right now you need it more than I do." He put his hat back on, preparing to leave. "I am staying at the boarding house on 2nd Street if you want to find me. Room 7. No pressure, Miss Edwards. Just think about it." He walked away before she could protest further, his boots crunching on the dry ground. Olivia picked up the pouch with trembling hands. Inside was more money than she had seen in years, enough to pay the mortgage and the medical bills and have something left over. He had given this to her without even waiting for an answer, trusting that she would either marry him or pay him back someday. What kind of man did that? She went back inside and sat at the table, the pouch in front of her like evidence of something impossible. Her practical mind began working through the logistics. Matthew Walker was offering marriage, yes, but it sounded more like a business arrangement than anything romantic. She would be his wife in name, which would give her respectability and protection. He would pay her debts and presumably expect her to keep house for him. It was not so different from many frontier marriages, unions born of necessity rather than passion. The alternative was losing everything and ending up working in one of the saloons or laundries, scraping by on pennies, always one mishap away from complete ruin. Or she could try to travel somewhere else, throw herself on the mercy of strangers in a bigger city. Both options terrified her. At least with Matthew, she would keep her home. She would have protection. And he had been honest about his expectations, which was more than many men would be. He was not pretending undying love or trying to sweep her off her feet with false promises. Just straightforward help from someone who understood what it meant to be alone. Olivia spent 2 days thinking, praying, and weighing her options. She went to the church and sat in the empty pews, asking God for guidance. She walked through her house, touching the things her family had touched, remembering their voices. She knew what they would want for her. They would want her to survive, to find happiness if possible, to not throw her life away out of pride or stubbornness. On the 3rd day, she walked to the boarding house on 2nd Street and knocked on the door of room 7. Matthew opened it, surprise crossing his face. "Miss Edwards, if your offer still stands, my answer is yes." The words came out steady, though her heart was racing. "I will marry you." Something lit in his eyes, relief and perhaps something more. "You are sure?" "I am not sure of anything except that I am out of better options, and you seem like a decent man. If you are genuinely offering this out of kindness and not expecting anything I cannot give, then yes, I accept." "I meant what I said. I expect respect and honesty, and I will give you the same. Everything else we will figure out together." He stepped aside. "Do you want to come in so we can talk details?" She entered the small room, noting how neat it was, his few possessions organized carefully. They sat in the 2 chairs by the window, and for the first time, really looked at each other as people rather than strangers. "When did you want to do this?" Olivia asked. "As soon as possible, if that is all right with you." "The sooner we are married, the sooner Pemberton and the others will leave you alone. I was thinking we could go to the preacher tomorrow, have a simple ceremony. Unless you want something more elaborate." "No, simple is fine. I do not have anyone to invite anyway." The words stung, but they were true. Matthew reached across and very carefully took her hand. His palm was calloused from years of ranch work, but his grip was gentle. "You do not have to be alone anymore, Olivia. I know I am not family, not really, but I will do my best to be someone you can count on." Tears finally came, the first since Samuel died. They spilled down her cheeks unchecked. Matthew did not try to shush her or tell her everything would be fine. He just held her hand and let her cry, his steady presence an anchor in the storm. They were married the next afternoon in the small church where Olivia's family was buried. The preacher seemed surprised by the sudden union but asked no questions. Matthew had 2 friends from the ranching outfit who served as witnesses, both men congratulating him afterward with knowing grins that made Olivia blush. She wore her mother's good blue dress instead of the mourning black, a small concession to the idea that this was supposed to be a happy occasion. Matthew signed his name in the register with careful precision, then handed her the pen. When she wrote Olivia Walker beside his name, the reality hit her fully. She was married. She had a husband. This stranger was now legally bound to her for life. They walked back to the house together, neither quite sure what to say. Matthew carried his saddlebags and a trunk containing his worldly possessions. When they reached the door, he paused. "You want me to sleep in the barn? I do not want to make you uncomfortable." Olivia considered. The house had 3 bedrooms, her parents' room, which was the largest, the room she had shared with Samuel, and a small storage room. "You can take my parents' room. I will stay where I have been sleeping. The small room is full of supplies, but we could clear it out eventually if needed." "That sounds fine. And Olivia, I meant what I said. This marriage is real in the eyes of the law and God, but I am not going to demand anything from you. We will share a house and our lives, but I will not push for more unless and until you want it. Understood?" She nodded, grateful beyond words for his consideration. Many men would have seen the wedding as giving them certain rights, especially with a woman who had no family to protect her. Matthew was proving himself different. They spent the evening in careful politeness, establishing routines and boundaries. Matthew insisted on helping with dinner, admitting that he was a decent cook from years on cattle drives. They made a simple stew together, moving around the kitchen in awkward choreography, bumping into each other and apologizing. Over the meal, they began to actually talk. Matthew told her about growing up in Colorado, about Tom Willis who had saved him, about the cattle drives and the places he had seen. Olivia shared memories of Pennsylvania, of the journey west, of her father's dreams for their new life. The conversation was halting at first but grew easier as the evening progressed. "What do you plan to do now?" Olivia asked. "You said you have been drifting since Mr. Willis died. Will you continue with the cattle drives?" "I have been thinking about that. The season is almost over anyway. I was considering trying to start my own small ranch, maybe buy some land outside town and build up a herd. It would mean staying in one place, building something permanent." He looked at her seriously. "But I am open to other ideas. This is your home. I do not want to uproot you unless you want to go. I like the idea of staying here, at least for now. Maybe someday we could expand, buy adjacent property. My father always said the grazing land up in the foothills was excellent. He was right about that." Matthew's eyes showed approval. "We could start small, get a few head of cattle, maybe some horses. Build up slowly and sensibly. I have enough money left after paying your debts to make a decent start." They were planning a future together, Olivia realized, not just surviving day to day, but actually thinking ahead. It felt strange and fragile, but also oddly hopeful, like green shoots after a forest fire. That night, she lay in her narrow bed listening to the unfamiliar sounds of someone else in the house. Matthew moving around in the other room, the creak of the bed springs as he settled down, his quiet breathing through the thin walls. It should have felt intrusive, frightening even. Instead, it felt almost comforting, knowing she was not completely alone in the darkness. The next morning, Matthew woke before dawn and went out to assess the property. By the time Olivia rose and dressed, he was already mucking out the small stable and repairing a broken fence rail. She watched from the window, impressed by how efficiently he worked, every movement purposeful and skilled. She made breakfast and called him in. He washed up at the pump and came to the table with damp hair and a grateful smile. "You did not have to do all this. You are working." "The least I can do is cook." She poured coffee for both of them. "What is your assessment?" "The bones are good. Your father built well, but everything needs maintenance that it has not gotten. I am guessing he was sick for a while before the fever hit." Olivia nodded. "His lungs troubled him all last year. He could not do the heavy work anymore. Then we have repairs to make, but nothing insurmountable. The stable can hold 4 horses comfortably. There is space behind the house where we could build a proper barn for cattle. The well is solid and the water is good. We have a strong foundation to build on." Over the following weeks, they fell into a rhythm. Matthew worked on repairs and improvements, tackling the accumulated neglect with patient determination. Olivia maintained the house and began working on the garden that had gone wild during her family's illness. They cooked together in the evenings, cleaned up side by side, and talked about everything and nothing. Slowly, carefully, they became friends. Olivia found herself looking forward to Matthew coming in from his work, enjoying their dinner conversations, appreciating his dry sense of humor and thoughtful observations. He was intelligent despite his lack of formal education, well-read from borrowing books wherever he could, curious about the world beyond the cattle trails. Matthew, for his part, seemed to relax more each day, his initial careful formality giving way to genuine warmth. He laughed more easily, shared more stories, asked her opinions on decisions rather than just making pronouncements. He treated her like a partner, something Olivia had not expected but deeply appreciated. One evening in late October, they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and crimson. The air had turned crisp with the promise of coming winter. Matthew had spent the day in town, using the last of Tom Willis's inheritance to buy 3 young heifers and a good bull from a rancher who was selling out. "They will be delivered next week," he said. "The start of our herd. It is not much, but it is something." "It is everything," Olivia corrected. "It is our future starting to take shape." Matthew looked at her, something shifting in his expression. "I need to tell you something. I did not come to your door that day entirely out of noble intentions." Olivia's heart skipped. "What do you mean?" "I mean I noticed you long before your family got sick. You used to come into town on Saturdays with your mother, buying supplies. I saw you there, and I thought you were the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. But you were always with your family, and I figured you probably had suitors already, and anyway, I was just a drifter. I had nothing to offer someone like you." She stared at him, completely shocked. "You noticed me. How could I not? But I never imagined actually speaking to you, much less anything more. Then I heard about the fever and about your parents, and I thought about checking on you, but I was away with the herd. When I got back and heard that Samuel had passed too, that you were completely alone, something just clicked in my head. I realized I had a chance to help you, and maybe, if I was very lucky, you might eventually see me as more than just a means of survival." "Matthew, I do not know what to say." "You do not have to say anything. I am not asking you to return feelings you do not have. I just wanted to be honest. This started as me offering help, but on my side at least, there was already something more. I have been falling for you more each day we spend together, and I needed you to know that. But nothing has to change. I will still be patient and respectful. I just could not keep pretending this was only a business arrangement for me." Olivia's mind was reeling. She tried to remember those Saturdays in town, whether she had ever noticed a tall cowboy watching her. There were vague impressions, a sense of someone's gaze, but nothing concrete. She had been so focused on her family, on helping her struggling father and caring for Samuel, that she had not paid attention to young men. But now, knowing that Matthew had noticed her, had wanted her even then, changed something fundamental. She looked at him in the fading light, really looked at him. The strong line of his jaw, the gentle eyes, the capable hands that had fixed so much around her home. The kindness that permeated everything he did, the way he made her feel safe and valued and heard. When had she started looking forward to his presence? When had his smile become something that warmed her from the inside? When had this arrangement started feeling like something more? "I am not sure what I feel," she said slowly. "Everything has been such a blur, so much grief and fear and adjustment. But I can tell you that you have become important to me. I trust you, I enjoy your company, and I find myself caring about your happiness. I do not know if that is love or just gratitude or some combination, but it is real. That is more than enough for now." Matthew reached over and took her hand, the gesture familiar now after weeks of small touches and growing comfort. "We have time, Olivia. We have all the time in the world to figure out what this is." Winter arrived in earnest in November, bringing snow that blanketed Alta in white silence. The cattle they had purchased were settled in the newly built shelter behind the house. Matthew had found work helping other ranchers with winter preparations, bringing in needed income. Olivia had taken on mending and sewing for some of the town women, her neat stitches valued. They were making it work, building a life together from the broken pieces they had started with. The first time Matthew kissed her was on a snowy evening in early December. They had been stringing popcorn for the small tree Matthew had cut, laughing over his terrible attempts at threading the needle. Their hands brushed, reaching for the same piece, and suddenly they were very close, looking at each other with new awareness. "Can I kiss you?" Matthew asked, his voice rough. Olivia's answer was to lean forward and close the distance between them. The kiss was gentle, tentative, full of question and promise. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. "I have wanted to do that for weeks," Matthew admitted. "Why did you wait so long?" "I told you I would not push. I needed you to be ready." "I think I have been ready for a while. I was just afraid to admit it." Olivia reached up and touched his face. "I am not afraid anymore, Matthew. I know what I feel now. It is not just gratitude or convenience. I love you. I genuinely, truly love you." The joy that transformed his face was beautiful to see. "I love you too. God, Olivia, I love you so much." They kissed again, deeper this time, years of loneliness and loss melting away in the warmth of connection. When they finally pulled apart, Matthew rested his forehead against hers. "I know we are already married legally, but this feels like the real beginning," he said. "Our real wedding night," Olivia agreed softly. Matthew pulled back to look at her seriously. "Are you sure? We do not have to rush anything." "I am sure. I want this. I want you. I want us to be a real married couple in every way." That night they came together with tenderness and care, Matthew gentle and patient, Olivia nervous but willing. It was awkward in the way first times often are, but it was also sweet and genuine. Two people learning each other, choosing each other, loving each other. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the bed that had been hers alone for so long, now transformed into their shared space. "No regrets?" Matthew asked, stroking her hair. "Not a single one. You? I regret that I did not get the courage to speak to you sooner before everything happened. But I cannot regret where we ended up. Is that terrible of me? No, it is human. I cannot regret it either. I wish my family was still here. I will always wish that. But I cannot regret finding this." She pressed closer to him. "You said I had you if I wanted, and I want you, this marriage, our life together, all of it. Then you have me. For as long as we both live, you have me." They fell asleep wrapped in each other, the wind howling outside but warmth surrounding them. Spring came to Alta with dramatic suddenness, snow melting into rushing streams, wildflowers exploding across the meadows. Matthew and Olivia worked together to expand their small ranch, buying more cattle with the money they had saved through the winter. Word had spread that Matthew Walker was reliable and skilled, and he found steady work helping other ranchers with breaking horses and managing herds. Olivia discovered she was pregnant in May. The realization came with mixed emotions, joy and terror tangled together. Her mother had died in childbirth with a baby that would have been Olivia's younger sister. The memory haunted her as her belly began to swell. Matthew noticed her fear and addressed it directly one evening. "Talk to me. Tell me what you are thinking." "I am terrified," she admitted. "My mother died having a baby. What if that happens to me? What if you lose me like you lost everyone else? What if this baby never takes a breath?" "Those are all reasonable fears," Matthew said carefully. "But you are not your mother, and this is not that pregnancy. We will get the doctor here well before your time. I will not leave your side. And we will hope and pray that everything goes well, because that is all we can do." "You are not scared." "I am terrified," he admitted. "But I am also excited. We are creating something new, Olivia, a family, our family, that is worth being scared for." She leaned against him, drawing strength from his solid presence. "You are right. This is our family, our beginning." The pregnancy progressed without major complications, though Olivia was sick in the mornings and exhausted by evening. Matthew took over more of the housework without complaint, insisting she rest. He talked to the baby constantly, his hands on her belly, telling stories and making promises. "I will teach you to ride," he would say, "and how to read the weather and find water. And your mother will teach you to be strong and smart and kind, because she is all of those things." Their son was born in January of 1880, during a brief warm spell between storms. The labor was long and difficult, but both mother and baby came through healthy. Matthew cried when he held his son for the first time, this tiny perfect person they had created together. "What should we name him?" Olivia asked, exhausted but elated. "I was thinking Thomas, after Tom Willis. And Samuel for your brother, Thomas Samuel Walker." "That is perfect." Olivia watched Matthew cradle their son with surprising confidence for someone who had never held a baby before. "You are going to be a wonderful father. I am going to try. He deserves the best we can give him." Thomas was a healthy, happy baby who looked like his father, but had Olivia's eyes. Watching Matthew with their son, seeing the gentleness and patience he showed, Olivia fell in love with her husband all over again. He would walk the floor for hours when Thomas cried, singing old trail songs in his rough voice. He changed diapers without complaint and got up for nighttime feedings, bringing the baby to Olivia, and then staying awake to keep her company. As Thomas grew, so did their ranch. They bought the adjacent property when it came available, expanding their grazing land. Matthew hired 2 ranch hands to help with the increasing work. Olivia kept the books and managed the household, proving to have a natural head for numbers and business. By 1882, they had a solid reputation in the territory. Walker Ranch was known for quality cattle and fair dealing. They had paid back every debt and had money in the bank. Thomas was 2 years old, a bright, energetic toddler who followed his father everywhere. Olivia was pregnant again, and this time she faced it with confidence rather than fear. She knew what to expect, and she knew Matthew would be there through all of it. Their daughter was born in September, an easier birth than Thomas had been. They named her Grace Ann Walker, and she had her mother's dark hair and her father's gray eyes. "We have a matched set now," Matthew joked, holding Grace while Thomas peered curiously at his new sister. "Is that enough for you?" Olivia asked. "2 children." "I would be happy with a dozen if you wanted them, or just these 2, whatever makes you happy." "These 2 are perfect. Our family is perfect." Life settled into a comfortable pattern. The ranch prospered. The children grew healthy and loved. Matthew and Olivia's marriage deepened. The initial arrangement that had brought them together long forgotten in the reality of genuine partnership and love. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Matthew took Olivia up to the meadow above their house where wildflowers grew in profusion. They sat on a blanket while Thomas chased butterflies and Grace napped in Olivia's arms. "You remember what I said that day I came to your door?" Matthew asked. "You said I had you if I wanted you. And you wanted me, even though you had every reason not to trust a strange cowboy making an impossible offer." "It was not impossible. It was the most real thing anyone had ever offered me." Olivia shifted Grace to her other arm so she could take Matthew's hand. "You saved me, you know. Not just from losing the house or being alone. You saved me from giving up on life, on happiness, on the possibility of joy after loss. You saved me too. I was drifting with no purpose, no reason to build anything permanent. You gave me a reason to stay in one place, to put down roots, to believe I deserved something good." He kissed her hand. "I came to your door thinking I would rescue you, and instead we rescued each other. That is a much better story. It is the only story that matters. You and me and these babies and this life we built together. Everything else is just details." Thomas came running back, his hands full of wildflowers, and demanded to know if they could go see the horses. Grace woke and immediately wanted her mother. The moment of quiet reflection ended, but neither Matthew nor Olivia minded. This was their life now, full of noise and chaos and love. Years passed in the way years do, each season bringing changes and challenges. Thomas grew into a serious boy who loved animals and had his father's way with horses. Grace was wild and fearless, always climbing trees and exploring. The ranch expanded further, becoming one of the most successful operations in the territory. In 1885, when Thomas was 5 and Grace was 3, Olivia discovered she was pregnant again. This one was a surprise, but a welcome one. Their third child, a boy they named James Michael Walker, was born in spring of 1886. He was a quiet baby who watched everything with thoughtful eyes. Matthew was 40 by then, showing gray at his temples but still strong and capable. Olivia was 33, confident and content in ways her younger self could never have imagined. They had built something real and lasting from the ashes of loss and loneliness. On summer evenings, they would sit on the porch they had expanded to wrap around the whole house, watching their children play in the yard. The mountains rose in the distance, unchanging and eternal. The cattle lowed in the pastures, the horses nickered in the barn. "Do you ever think about that day I showed up at your door?" Matthew asked one such evening. "Sometimes. It feels like another lifetime ago." It was another lifetime. We were different people then, scared and lost and alone. And now we are found. Olivia leaned her head on his shoulder. "We found each other and we found ourselves and we built all of this. Best decision I ever made knocking on that door. Best decision I ever made opening it." Inside the house, James started crying. Grace shrieked with laughter at something. Thomas called for his parents. The sounds of their family, their life, the future they had created together. Matthew and Olivia looked at each other and smiled. That understanding that passed between people who had chosen each other every day for years. Then they stood and went inside together, into the warmth and chaos and love that filled every corner of the home they had built. The fever had taken everything from Olivia, left her with nothing but grief and fear. Matthew had offered himself, a lifeline in the darkness. She had taken it, and in doing so had found not just survival but true joy. Together they had built a family, a ranch, a legacy that would outlast them both. The story that had started with death and desperation had transformed into one of life and love and hope. And every day, in small ways and large, they continued to choose each other, to build together, to honor the promise Matthew had made standing on her porch that desperate September day. "You have me now if you want," he had said. And she had wanted and wants still, and will want for all the years to come. Their love was forged in hardship, but tempered by time into something unbreakable. Their family was born of loss, but grew into abundance. Their life together was the answer to prayers neither had dared to speak. As the years rolled on, Thomas grew into a young man who took naturally to ranching, learning everything his father could teach him. Grace became interested in breeding horses, showing a gift for working with the most difficult animals. James, quiet and thoughtful, surprised everyone by developing a passion for reading and writing, filling journals with observations about ranch life. Matthew and Olivia watched their children grow with pride and gratitude. They celebrated birthdays and holidays, weathered illnesses and accidents, supported dreams and aspirations. They added more rooms to the house as the children needed space. They hired more hands as the ranch grew. They became pillars of the Alta community, known for generosity and fair dealing. In 1895, when Thomas was 15 and announcing his intention to stay on the ranch rather than go east for schooling, Matthew and Olivia stood together watching the sunset paint the sky. "We did it," Olivia said softly. "We built something that will last beyond us. We did more than that." We created something beautiful from something broken. Matthew pulled her close. And it started with you taking a chance on a crazy cowboy with an impossible proposal. The best chance I ever took. They stood there, wrapped in each other and in the life they had built, as the stars began to appear overhead. The same stars that had watched them begin, strangers brought together by tragedy and kindness, now witnessed them standing strong, partners in every sense, surrounded by the family and future they had created together. The house was full of voices and laughter. The land was productive and well managed. The children were healthy and happy. And at the center of it all was a marriage that had begun as a desperate bargain and had transformed into the truest love either of them had ever known. Matthew Walker had stood on Olivia Edwards' porch and offered her himself. She had accepted, and in doing so had given him everything he had never known he wanted. Together they had proven that love does not always arrive with trumpets and poetry. Sometimes it comes in the form of a quiet offer, a hand extended in darkness, a promise to not let someone face the world alone. And sometimes, if you are very lucky, that offer transforms into something neither person could have imagined. A partnership. A family. A love that weathers every storm and grows stronger with each passing year. As the moon rose over Walker Ranch, Matthew and Olivia went inside to their children, their home, their life. The past, with all its pain, was honored but no longer ruled them. The future stretched bright and full of promise. And the present, this moment, was everything either of them had ever wanted. Two people who had lost everything had found each other and, in doing so, had found everything that mattered. Their story was written in the land they tended, the children they raised, the love they shared. It was a story of survival becoming joy, of strangers becoming family, of darkness transforming into light. And it all began with a simple, impossible, perfect offer. You have me now if you want, she had wanted. And in that wanting, in that brave acceptance of help and hope, both of them had discovered what it meant to truly live, truly love, truly belong. The stars wheeled overhead. The mountains stood eternal watch. And in the house full of light and love, the Walker family continued the beautiful, ordinary, extraordinary work of building a life together. One day, one choice, one moment of love at a time.